Today we are beyond thrilled to have with us the multi-award nominated and Eisner-winning writer Tom King and industry veteran powerhouse artist Peter Gross. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here with us on boomdirect.
Yeah, seriously, we just got to read the first issue yesterday of your new book, and we're very excited.
Thank you.
That sounds great, yeah.
I haven't even read the first issue.
No,
But let's go ahead and let's just dive right into it. So, Tom, what made you look at Animal Farm and think, yeah, I could do that? Or more concisely, how are you updating the framework of what Animal Farm is for our modern day political failings?
For the record, I never looked at Animal Farm and said I could do that. That would.
Listen, we wanted to know.
The exact opposite is more true. I looked at Animal Farm and said, I can't possibly do that. Tom, give up. This is too scary. Don't do it. And then I did it anyways because I'm an idiot. So yeah, it was the opposite of that. I wanted to talk about sort of the extremism today. After January 6th, I live in the Capitol Hill. I saw January 6th with my own eyes as I was walking my dog, which is perfect for Animal Pound. My dog was unimpressed by the entire phenomenon, just for the record. She mostly wanted to smell the grass. I have some great photos of my dog at the revolution. It's ridiculous.
We have to see those.
I'll send them. You can, in the background, you see people charging in the Capitol, and there's Roxy, and she's just like, "What? Why did we stop walking? We want to keep going." And yeah, I wanted to write about sort of that phenomenon, and at the same time, I've always been an admirer of Animal Farm, but Animal Farm is a great, it's marked our culture. It's been a very impactful book. It's one of those books that actually has change attached to it, in that it has presented a clear warning to the Western world that the ideals of communism can lead to fascism, as they did in Stalin's Russia, and in Mao's China, but that warning, that sort of loud shout of Animal Farm, did not seem to apply to the problems we are facing today. The people invading the Capitol were not like, we're going to form an ideal communist society and distribute bread to each other. They were doing something different. They were being manipulated in a different way. They were taking advantage of compromises that this country made in order to get along, in order to underground the whole ideals of the country. And so I wanted to make something that was, again, not as good as Orwell, but just to make, I can never make something as good as Orwell, but I can try. So I wanted to try to do what he did, and take a shot at doing a more modern take of sort of, that's not the threat that faces us today. Here's the threat that faces us today in an allegorical way, the same way he.
Peter, how did Tom convince you to come along for the ride? And on top of that, how have you approached the story and the characters?
Well, he didn't have to do any convincing. when Boom approached me and said it was a project with Tom, I was probably 80% on board then.
Just 80% though.
Yeah,
it'll be some sad guy looking at something.
I'm at a point where I was taking time off from work and I was just doing home remodeling and stuff. So I really wasn't interested in working right now. But I was like, well, Tom King, what's the project? And as soon as I read it, I was on board. That's like, how can you live through this time right now and not want to express something about it, and I'm not a big protester. I'm not putting signs in the front yard and stuff. What I do is make comics, and the chance to have something to say with a comic, something you can't pass by.
That's something you interesting you said earlier, that comics are propaganda to you. Is that for good or ill? How are you bringing that mentality to Animal Pound?
Well, I kind of bring that to every comic I do. I mean, and maybe it's true with every media is propaganda, but it's manipulative. You're trying to convince. I mean, I'm not really interested in telling stories about what I believe to people who believe the exact same thing I do. Right. I mean, I hope something like this can be a little more subversive and get under people's radar, or something, and maybe have them look at something, from a more allegorical point of view and say, oh yeah, that is kind of fucked, isn't it? But I think just by their nature of what comics were, I think they're a very propagandistic medium. And I think they should be. And I think that writers, often they're not thinking about what they want to tell with the story. So all they're doing is propaganda about their own insecurities. Like,
well, art is supposed to.
And who needs that, right?
Yeah.
Don't worry, Peter. It's still about my insecurities. It's
but there's a layer of something more there.
Yeah. There's just a little extra. Yeah.
I mean, art reflects life. So I'm so glad that Animal Pound reflects your life, Tom. I don't know how to say that.
No, it's. I mean, it's a real dilemma. I have a kind of a solid rule through all of my writing is that like I don't like comics that read like somebody's Twitter feed. Like I don't like comics that yell. like that's what I mean. When Twitter used to be a thing, but like I like stories. I don't like lectures.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to read like you're saying. Someone's like that just tells me something obvious or you're obvious, and even like I went to a college and but I don't know if I have any like deep philosophical thoughts that I could spread. I was a philosophy major, and I always wondered when I was a philosophy major, why read literature? Like I totally did not understand it. I was like everyone reads literature to get like messages about how to live their life, but then philosophers actually just talk directly about it instead of talking around it with stories. And it wasn't until I got older and mature that I realized that like there are things our words can't get at. There are uses that stories have uses that beyond words, where you can talk about things that you can't express in a Twitter feed or in a lecture, that a story can hit you in a powerful way that hits you on a gut level that no actual just sort of like this is what I believe will ever hit you at. So this. I still feel like I'm not violating that rule of like, this is not just me ranting, me like, this is my political beliefs, this is why you should vote. Like, that's not what this book is about. This book is an allegory that applies hopefully to this moment, but also to many moments throughout history, both in the past and the future.
Yeah, and
you have to sneak the ideas in and not yell. I mean, as an example of like the subversive part of comics that I love is like my favorite compliments I ever get is when I read that someone hates my artwork, but they love this comic. And it's like, oh, you love me. You don't know it, but you do.
Do you know
how? Yeah.
Also, do you know how comics works? Like, especially.
I have to say, I was like that with Jack Kirby when I was a kid, though. I hated his artwork, but I loved all his comics. Yeah.
But
it took
Kirby
me a long time to realize what a genius he was.
Kirby is king.
I think that's the thing about it too, is Tom, kind of like what you were saying, is like all those reviews are people's gut feelings of like, I like this comic, I can't explain why, and there's aspects of it I don't like, but like overall this is doing something to me viscerally. That's the kind of stuff I personally like to see in reviews, because it's like it touched you on a visceral level, and that is meaningful.
And I love art that makes you feel something. Like, that's not the only point of art, but that's one of the points, right? Like,
yeah, well, and especially when you're doing storytelling with it.
Yeah. In the Orwell novel itself, the farm is like very like representative as like a character, providing an allegorical message of abundance and how it's controlled. So, talking about messages, what role does the pound play in Animal Pound? Now that we know it needed more bars, specifically.
I mean,
I think it very much does. I mean, the way Tom wrote it, and I had to draw it a little differently because I thought he had too much, he had a real emphasis on doors and locks, but almost like I can't draw that many door and lock panels and still get everything in, but I had to find a way and create that sense of those beats, but it's like very much that environment, that idea of doors opening and closing and holding you out and chaining you in, and I think as the story moves further, there's some very clever use of the environment to kind of echo our culture in ways that I didn't expect. When I was kind of like, how is he going to pull, how is he going to justify this or that? And then he did it later in the script. And I thought this, very clever and elegant way of doing these things. So it's very much a microcosm.
Yeah, I mean, exact. Peter said it better than I'm going to say it, but what's interesting about it to me is it's their prison, and then it becomes their home, and then at the end, it's going to become their prison again, right? I'm not a spoiler. This is obviously based on Animal Farm. It doesn't have the happiest of endings. So yeah, that transition of a place from a place of horror to a place of hope to a place of horror again, I think sort of echoes our sort of creation myths of like, you start in a place of bad, you build something good, but then the parts that you make to build the good become bad again. So that's all built into the pound.
Yeah, because I will say when we read the Ashcan yesterday, I was reading it going, oh my gosh, because I hadn't thought about it for some reason, how maybe because I had cats who could open doors, where it was like one of the big themes at the beginning was like, the reason that they have power over us, the humans, is not because they're smarter than us. It's not because they're better than us. It's because like basically they can use doors and locks. Like they can have a doorknob and a locks. Yeah. And I remember being like, oh my gosh. And again, I looked at the dog and I was like, Sophie, is this true? But like, just looked at me like, of course not. But it was very like, I hadn't thought about that. And it's like that representation of power and using that as like a symbol, I was like, oh man. I was also watching really dark stuff last night too, after reading it. Anyway, it's a big thing.
Well, and as a symbol, it's interesting the way Tom used it, because to us, doors are a symbol of openings, and to the animals, it's the exact opposite. It's a symbol of limits.
Yeah.
Which is a way I don't think humans think of doors at all.
No, I was going to say doors for me, it's always like the presenting you with the opportunity of something new, of a new journey, of a new story, of an outlook. I think part of that is from reading way too much Stephen King as a child and getting really wrapped up in the Dark Tower mythos and the power doors have in that. But yeah, the very simple thought of like, oh, this is wholly a unique human outlook on doors, and let's try to switch the mindset about that a little bit is brilliant.
Locks have power though, even as a human.
Yeah.
I will say that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I have a little puppy. I have a pit bull mix rescue dog, rescued from a pound, that I spend most of my day with every day, who's just a pure joy to me. But she's a terrible dog. She'll rip a hole in the mailman if you let her, if anybody comes in our house. And so we're constantly sort of putting her behind doors and her trying to break out, and her whining behind a door, and her waiting for a door to open. And, and she's the kind of dog who, when you leave the house, just sits by the door. You can leave the house for, not that we ever would, but if you left the house for 8 hours, she wouldn't leave, sitting by the door, just looking at it, being like, when is that door going to open? So they come back and give me my joy again. Like her whole life is dictated by doors. So it becomes, this is Roxy's little story gift to me that she gave me.
That's what this dog does too, though. When I leave, even if it's for only 10 minutes, when I come back, she's so unbelievably excited to see me and is jumping because the door is open and I'm back.
Yeah, that's right. What goes on beyond that door? They close that thing and they disappear.
I drew a little moment on this. There's this page with a big panel of dogs chasing the people out of the pound. Yeah, I have one dog that jumped over on a couch on the side and is ripping apart a cushion. Oh, I love that bit.
It's the pure symbol of freedom for a dog.
Yes.
Yeah, completely ignoring everything else.
Well, to wrap us up, Tom and Peter, in your own words, why are you excited for folks to read Animal Pound, and what do you hope people take away from it?
Again, I've said before, I'm not excited. I'm mostly scared of people reading Animal Farm. This is the most ambitious thing I've ever done. This is me aiming right for the moon and knowing I can never hit it, and yet still getting in the rocket and get it going off. So I'm excited to see if I can pull it off. It's my little guy is so afraid of roller coasters, but he loves them at the same time. So like he really wants to go to amusement parks, and he goes there and doesn't ride anything. And then there's always a moment where I was like, you got to ride one of the ride. Just pick one and we'll go on it. And it's like, he has to fight every single instinct in him to get on that roller coaster and get on it. And as soon as he's off for the rest of the year, he talks about like, I went on the roller. That's how it feels. It feels like my little guy getting on a roller coaster.
I think for me, the most exciting thing is the idea that this could have appeal beyond the comic market. To people that don't know who I am, don't know who Tom is, couldn't care less, and still might just read this story cold, and it can get in under their skin and make them think a little bit.
That's what I thought when we heard editorial pitch to us about it, because I do book market and library market, and I was like, yes, give me this book for that market. Both of those markets are going to love this.
Well, if it doesn't make it there, it's your fault. Not.
I'm good at my job. Right, Anthony?
You're wonderful at your job.
No, remember, Peter, it's all my fault. It's my fault.
Tom's ready to take it all on. I take no blame for anything.
Tom's the scapegoat on this one for everybody.
but that is an exciting part. I mean, I spend 99% of my time working on superheroes, and superheroes can only go so far in their appeal. I mean, superheroes can't even go so far as to appeal to my wife who lives in my house. So like to make something that can break through that barrier and appeal to people who aren't always interested in people in tights and masks is wonderful. Wonderful.
I think that's like a wonderful place to leave this on too. Tom, specifically your kind of metaphor about like, aiming for something that you personally know you can't do, which by the way, you absolutely can. And I definitely think this book is going to hit the moon. But like still, getting into the rocket anyways, knowing that like, there's a chance you're not going to make it. I think that mirrors perfectly what the struggles of the animals in both Animal Farm and Animal Pound are going through, like there's this ideal, you're shooting for it, and, chances are it's going to come crashing down. But, the journey is about taking that shot anyways. And the real success is about taking that shot. But then also the real success is obviously all the Eisner nominations you're going to get off of this book. So, and wins. Yeah, absolutely. It's phenomenal.
And for all we know, Orwell stole the whole idea from someone else.
Exactly. Time is a flat circle. It's all cyclical. Orwell stole the idea from Tom. That's the story we're sticking with.
Timey-wimey.
I no comment. I can only get in trouble.
Well, with that, Tom, Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. You have been fantastic guests, and we're so excited to see Animal Pound on shelves in people's hands, and I'm personally excited to read the now 5-issue miniseries that it has become.
Thank you, greatly appreciate it. I got to write the next 2 issues.
Yeah, I got a feeling it's going to end up 10 or something.
Just keep adding.
Yeah, I haven't even dealt with the Supreme Court yet or anything.
I have the whole history of the United States in issue 3. All right, what a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone listening. And if you haven't already, please be sure to pick up Animal Pound and the Animal Pound Ash Can at your local comic book shop.
If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to watch the full-length episodes in podcast form. By watch, I mean listen.
And if you want to stay up to date on all the cool things we have coming down the pipeline for Boom Direct, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel or our podcast or follow Boom Studios on social media or do all of those things. I think you should just do all of those things.
Absolutely. Remember, comics are for everyone.
Which is why we make comics for everyone.
I'm Anthony Mauro.
I'm Harley Salbacka.
And this
is Boom Direct.
Direct.
Nailed it.